were denied tenure at DePaul University.
There were 3 stages. There was the debate, then there was the book, and then, as Professor Chomsky said at the time, Alan Dershowitz went on a jihad to stop me from getting tenure. And the purpose was, to me, was perfectly obvious, because I was up for tenure at a very modest institution. You would say 4th tier institution. And what he wanted to do was to convey to the public that if this guy Finkelstein can't even get tenure at this 4th tier university, then he's a real academic loser. So he was determined that I would be stripped of any academic title which might in any, even the tiniest way, legitimize me and thereby legitimize my scholarship. And he engaged in activities which were, if I can use the most euphemistic language, which were squalid and sordid. He assembled a 60-page dossier on me, which he sent to every single university official, administrator, and faculty.
Just for the audience's benefit, Alan Dershowitz himself described this dossier as quote, Norman Finkelstein's most egregious academic sins, and especially his outright lies, misquotations, and distortions that are not incidental to Finkelstein's purported scholarship. They are Finkelstein's purported scholarship.
You know, I'll tell you, he produced so many dossiers on me. I can't remember. Do you happen to know how many pages that one is?
I believe that one was 62, but I'll double check that.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yep.
And that was already the era of email and attachments. So he sent it to everybody in the university. Then he wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal telling them not to give me tenure. And then he wanted to get a rise out of me. He wanted to get under my skin. So he began to go around saying, and posted on his Harvard Law School website, that my late mother was a Nazi collaborator.
My God. Wow.
And at that time, the dean of the law school was Elena Kagan, who subsequently joined the Supreme Court. And I asked Elena Kagan, I said, does Harvard Law School website, does it have any parameters, any limits? And she said, well, yes, we have, but we have very broad parameters. Okay. So this is Justice Kagan. So I asked her, I said, what is the evidence for that claim that Professor Dershowitz is making? And she said, I don't know. It's his business, not mine. So I said to her, well, let's take a hypothetical. How about if a professor posted in the Harvard Law School website that your mother was screwing around with the rabbis in the neighborhood?
Wow.
How long would that stay up? How long would that stay up, Ms. Kagan? Now, you might laugh and say, wow, but my mother's whole family was driven into gas chambers. She's the only one that survived. Which is more disgusting, to say your mother effed around with the rabbi, or that your mother was a collaborator with the people who gassed her family? And I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to get a rise out of me so I would sue him. And then he could claim, you see, we're both trying to suppress speech. That was the strategy, because at that point he looked bad. Right. After the Schwarzenegger, after the letters and the statements to the Boston Globe. So he wanted to put me in a position of trying to suppress his speech.
Did he ever, and it's important to note that there was absolutely no truth to this, but this is in many ways almost a Nazi tactic of telling such an extravagant lie that people have to believe that there's some level of truth to it.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly why, Hitler was no dummy. He knew history and he knew art. Obviously, he was deficient in many areas where he thought he knew than what he actually did. But he knew history, he knew art, and he did know propaganda. He understood propaganda. If you read chapter 5, I think, of Mein Kampf, which is titled Propaganda, it's actually quite well done. You would know because he was pretty gifted in that particular area. And if you read Mein Kampf, he has a section on the big lie. And it's an interesting observation he makes. There are quite a lot of interesting observations. Look, he wasn't brilliant, but he wasn't a total fool either. And he said, it's counterintuitive. Now I'm using my language, not his. It's counterintuitive. But he said, the bigger the lie, the more credible it is. Because he said, if you see a small lie, people think, well, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But if you say a gargantuan lie, people think, nobody could be so brazen as to say that unless there's some truth to it.
Exactly.
And so Professor Dershowitz was a master of the big lie theory, or a practitioner of the big lie theory. And by the way, since October 7th, since the events in Gaza, he's resumed it. He went on the Comedy Central program, the fellow Noam Dworman. Do you know that program?
Yeah.
He went on the program and he just said, without any equivocation, without any caveats, without any qualifications, he said, all I know about Finkelstein's mother was that she was a Nazi collaborator during World War II.
Right. That's such a disgusting. That's Noam Dworman of the Comedy Cellar. That's such a disturbing and disgusting lie. Have you ever said to Dershowitz, just like, why are you saying this? Did you ever confront him about this lie?
Yeah, actually, about 7 years ago, I was with a Lebanese friend in an Indian restaurant on the Upper East Side. And unexpectedly, he was there. And then my friend said, well, what do you think if we call him over to the table and have a chat? And I have to say, I was very torn. I was very conflicted because I knew my mother would totally disrespect me. Look, my mother was a typical Jewish mother, squared or cubed in my case. However, there's only one occasion where she actually endangered my life, literally. And that's when she was testifying at a trial for Nazi war criminals in 1979 in Dusseldorf, at that point, West Germany. And without going through all the details, one night we were walking out of the courtroom and there was, on this side of me, one of the guards from Majdanek concentration camp, which is where my mother was interred, as was my father. And this person, her name was Birgitta, she was notorious as the worst. That's saying a lot when you're the worst because Majdanek was notorious for the female side. It was actually more brutal. The female guards were more brutal than the male side. At least that's what Rahul Hilberg, the great historian of the Nazi Holocaust, told me. In any case, we're walking out into the Dusseldorf night, and Birgitta was right here next to me, almost touching my shoulder. And my mother was on my left side. It was such a grotesque provocation. My mother once said, we always dreamt in the camp that one day we're going to get our vengeance on these people. And here she was. I didn't say anything. I just kept my peace. I waited for Brigida to get, you would say the equivalent, I see it in my mind's eye, I would say equivalent of 3/4 of a block down. And I turned to my mother. I said, "Do you know who that is?" And my mother squinted, and then her face just lit up. And she said, "Brigida?" I said, "Yeah, it's Brigida." And I said to my mother, "What do you want me to do?" And she went, "Get her! Get her! They think we're sheep. Get her!" Now, as I said, I tell you the story because my mother was a Jewish mother.
Yeah.
Protective of the children to a fault, for sure. However, when it came to that,
All bets were off.
she wouldn't care if I got killed. I swear to God. She was seized. Get her! Get her! So I tell you the story because Dershowitz called my mother a Nazi collaborator. And now I had to wrestle. Should I talk to him? Well, in the Indian restaurant, should I talk to him? I have to say, a part of me was curious. He destroyed me, and there was a certain curiosity, I have to admit it. So I said to my friend, okay. And he came, Dershowitz came, and we talked. And I did ask him, "Why did you say those things about my mother?" And he then started to babble. "Well, you know, I read." I said, "Look, Professor Dershowitz, I know your academic record. It's impressive. I won't deny that. I never deny things like that. Smart is smart. A good athlete is a good athlete. A good musician is a good musician, whether I like them or not." I said, started off in Brooklyn College, a modest school. You then got catapulted to Yale Law School. You graduated first in your class. That's a real achievement. I would not gainsay it. I said, but I said, "I've read all your books the last 20 years, everything." I said, "It's complete garbage." And it was interesting, his reaction. His reaction was he shrugged his shoulders like, "What can I do?" He didn't deny it. No, he didn't deny it. And then after that, I said to him, "So please don't tell me you read anything anywhere. You knew what you were saying was a lie." And here was his response. His response was, "Well, you said that I plagiarized."
Wow.
As if to say, what did you expect me to do after you said those things? So to me, it was a backhanded admission. Of course, he knew it was complete fabrication. So that was it's all recorded. Actually, I have a record of the whole thing because the Lebanese guy decided to record it.
Good for him.
So I have a record of that for the archives of Alan Dershowitz.